Hello, YouTube fam. Get ready for another captivating episode of Sorry What. In this installment, we expose a tale of deception and unfaithfulness that will send shockwaves through your very core. So, Alyssa. Mom began. I did a mental eye roll. I knew what was coming again. Have you decided on your future yet? It was an ongoing question with my mom. There really wasn't a whole lot to decide. It was either going to the local community college and taking all the classes I could, before transferring to the local university to finish my degree, or going out and getting a low-paying job as just a high school graduate. There really weren't many other options open to me. Oh, and let's not forget that I would also need to work at least a part-time job to afford even going to the local community college. Mom, you know that I've always been fascinated by the medical field. Sure, I would love to become a doctor, but there is no possible way for me to go to medical school without ending up with a couple hundreds of thousands of dollars in student loans. I'm probably just going to go to the local community college to get my lower level classes out of the way, then transfer to the local university to finish my degree in nursing. That way I can live at home while going to school to help save money. But sweetie, you're an excellent student and are going to graduate in the top 5% of your class. You have a 3.96 GPA. Surely you have gotten several scholarship offers, Mom complained. Okay, let's go over this again. Yes, I am at the top of my graduating class. Yes, you would think that would generate some pretty good scholarship offers. Normally, that is true. The issue is that I am graduating at the top of a class in one of the most underperforming high schools in the country. Colleges not only look at your GPA, high school transcripts, and every other factor in your high school career, but they also look at the school itself. The way they look at it, graduating at the top of a failing high school, is pretty much the same as being a mediocre student at an average high school. Okay, sure, I got a couple of partial scholarship offers from average colleges, but nothing that would cover everything that I would need. I would have to make up the difference, and Lord knows that there is no possible way that we can afford that. Sometimes the truth hurts. It did on that occasion. I saw the look on Mom's face when she was confronted with the facts. It wasn't her fault that we were in this position. We were stuck in the lower middle class purgatory. Dad made just enough to disqualify me from getting financial aid for lower income students, but not nearly enough to be of any significant help in sending me to college. In fact, none of my family was even close to being well off. Even my grandmother lived a pretty austere life. She didn't really get much out of her 3 divorces. I guess that's what happens when you cheat on your husbands, and they take the time to hide their assets. But what about the extra classes you have already taken at the community college? Mom asked. Yes, I was taking a couple of courses at the community college already. I was also doing quite well in them. Mom, they really don't look too hard at those. Okay, so they are actually college classes, but they are remedial classes. They basically look at them as an extension of high school classes. The chemistry course I took over the summer was basically a glorified high school course, designed to prepare me for a real college chemistry course. Anyway, here I was entering my final semester of high school and trying to figure out my future. As I mentioned earlier, I had always been fascinated by the medical field. I loved watching the evening dramas on TV that revolved around hospitals and doctors. My dirty little secret is that I also love reading erotica online. One of my favorite series is about a woman that was injured in a helicopter crash when she was a flight medic in the army. She ended up being paralyzed from the waist down and medically discharged. She ended up going to medical school and becoming a doctor. The main character was so cool, smart and compassionate. I wanted to be just like her, well, except for being in a helicopter crash and being paralyzed, of course. It's an awesome read, and it also ties into most of the other stories that the author wrote. Anyway, it looked like my dream of becoming a doctor was not going to come true. Given the economics of my life, the best that I would be able to do was to become a nurse. Sure, being a nurse was an honorable profession, and it would still be in the medical field. There was no shame in that. Still, it was not my dream. Such is life. Dreams rarely come true for most of us. All we can do is plug along and make the best of the hand that we are dealt. Okay, so I should probably give some background on what my and my family's situation is. I am an only child. My family consists of me, my mother and father, and my grandmother. As stated earlier, my grandmother has been married and divorced 3 times. Each time it was because she cheated on her husband at the time. My parents are married and have been for all of my life. I'm old enough now to recognize that my parents do not exactly have the loving relationship that a lot of my friends' parents have. They don't sleep in the same room, and I have never heard or even had any indication that they have ever had sex since I have been alive. Actually, I realized several years ago that my mother was cheating on my dad. I never knew why he was putting up with that. Sadly, I actually lost a lot of respect for him once I realized what was going on. In his defense, which I came to understand later, I never saw him go out with another woman in all that time. As far as I could tell, he remained faithful to my mother. So, that brings us pretty much up to date. It was the day after my conversation with my mom. I finally decided to get the ball rolling and enroll in the community college for the next semester. I was in the library and working on my laptop to fill out the forms. Suddenly, there was a presence next to me. I looked up and saw a really attractive mid-40s woman standing by my table. She was dressed professionally in a smart business suit. The skirt was cut to her knees with a matching jacket. Her silk blouse was blood red, and she had on relatively conservative inch heels. "Are you Alyssa Compton?" she asked. I had the feeling that she already knew the answer to the question, but she was just being polite in asking. "Yes, I am. Can I help you?" I answered. She chuckled at that, then proceeded. "No, but I am sure that I can assist you." She placed a business card down on the table, then proceeded. "Please be at this address tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. I already know that you do not have any previous engagements at that time, and it would definitely be in your best interest to be there." With that, she turned on her 4-inch stiletto heels and strutted out of the room. I didn't let my mom or dad know about the woman that I met in the library. Honestly, I had no idea what she wanted, so I wasn't going to tell anyone about it until I knew what was going on. I tucked the card into my purse and continued studying. That night, I went home and acted normal. It wasn't hard, because there really wasn't anything abnormal about the day, except that a stunning woman gave me her card and told me that I needed to be at her office the next morning. There was one odd thing when I got home, though. "Where's Dad?" I asked. "Apparently, there is some emergency at one of his company's other offices. He had to go out of town on short notice to fix the problem," Mom replied. "Oh, he doesn't normally go out of town. Whose office is it, and when will he be back?" "I don't really know. He never mentioned it. He'll probably be back in a day or two." As you may have gleaned from earlier, Mom really wasn't that interested in what Dad was doing. As long as he was working and paying the bills, she really didn't care. 10 a.m. found me at the door of a law office on the 5th floor of the building. Entering the office, I walked up to the receptionist, handed her the card that the woman had given me yesterday, and told her that I had an appointment. She looked at the card, picked up her phone, punched a couple of buttons, then said, "Ms. Hammond, your 10 o'clock is here." A couple of minutes later, the same stunning woman from yesterday appeared. "Ah, Miss Compton. I'm really glad that you came this morning. I have a feeling that this could be a day that you look back on very fondly. Please follow me," she said as she shook my hand, then led me back to a conference room. "Would you like something to drink? Coffee, tea, water, or soda?" she asked. "Water will be fine. I've already had enough coffee this morning." She punched a couple buttons on the phone, then requested that Amber, the receptionist, bring in a cup of coffee for her and a bottle of water for me. "First things first," she began. "My name is Carrie Hammond. I was your maternal grandfather's lawyer. The reason for this meeting is to distribute your share of his last will and testament. He left a video for you to watch, then I will inform you of your inheritance. There will be several forms to sign in order for you to receive the trusts, accounts, and other properties that you will be receiving." "Wait a minute," I argued. "You are talking like my grandfather is dead. I knew all 3 of my grandmother's ex-husbands, and I know that they are all still alive. Are you sure that you have the right person here?" She gave me a beaming smile. "Quite positive," she answered. "You know your grandmother's last 3 ex-husbands, but you never met or knew her first husband. The video will explain all of that." With that, she turned, picked up a remote, and started a video on the large flat-screen TV on the wall. The screen came on and showed an older man that was quite obviously very sick. A few seconds later, I heard Ms. Hammond tell him from off-screen that the video was rolling. He looked back at the screen and began talking. "Hello, Alyssa. I know that you don't know me, but I know you very well. I am David Knight, and I am your biological grandfather. I know that you have been told otherwise, but Ms. Hammond has the proof that what I am telling you is the truth." With that, Ms. Hammond slid a thick folder across the table to me. 2 months before you were born, I discovered that your grandmother was cheating on me. I filed for divorce and left. Your mother was so mad at me that she cut me out of her, and as a result your life. I was not allowed to see or communicate with you. Your grandmother moved her lover at that time in with her, and you had always been told that he was your biological grandfather. Since I could not have any contact with you, I began watching you from a distance. Once several years had passed and my business grew, I became successful enough to be able to hire private detectives to keep track of you. Also, I have kept in touch with your father. Obviously, this had to be done in secret. Don't think that he is less of a man for staying with your cheating mother. Well, I personally don't agree with his decision. It was the right decision for him. He stayed because of you. He realized that the only chance that you had to grow into the moral and caring woman that you are is if you remained solidly in your life and could teach you the right values. Had he divorced your mother, your main role models would have been your cheating mother and grandmother. He stayed in order to give you a real role model. Now that you are an adult and about to graduate high school, he has no more reason to stay with your mother. Ms. Hammond will explain more later. Now, for the matter at hand. Since you are watching this video, that means that I have died. I regret that I was never able to let you know about me and spend time with you. We actually did meet a couple of times, but that was in passing. I set those encounters up so I could see you in person, and we could say a few words to each other. Since I divorced your grandmother, I have become extremely successful and wealthy. I am leaving most of my estate to you, with a couple of conditions. Most of it, you will not have access to until you complete college. Ms. Hammond will explain all of that to you. Some of it will depend on what you decide to study. With all that being said, I now turn the rest of this meeting over to Ms. Hammond. The video continued in silence for a few more seconds before ending. Ms. Hammond pulled a large file folder out of her briefcase and began explaining my sudden inheritance. First and foremost, this is a trust that your grandfather set up for your college. You can literally go to any university in the country. It pays for all tuition, books, housing, food, transportation, and even a generous monthly allowance for entertainment or whatever else you need. It will also pay for a master's or even a doctorate if you wish to go that far. Once you have completed your degrees, you will get access to another trust. That will help get you started on your career without worrying about your financial situation until you are established. As far as career choices, depending upon what you choose to study, you could have a position in your grandfather's company and eventually take it over. Obviously, that would be conditional on your choice of career. That would need to be either a business degree, engineering, or possibly a law degree. That would be entirely your choice. If you do not choose one of those paths, you would still inherit the trust funds worth several hundreds of millions of dollars. I was completely stunned. Here was the answer to my prayers about going to college. More than that, I could continue on to get my medical degree and become a doctor. Better yet, I wouldn't have hundreds of thousands of dollars in loans to pay back after I graduated. What happens to the business if I don't go into those fields and take the company over? I asked. Then your father continues to run it until he retires and turns it over to whomever the board of directors names as the next CEO. You, by the way, will still own significant shares and even be on the board of directors. When your father does retire, you will be named chairman of the board. When you retire, your heir will take over. The company will always be controlled by your family until the last heir dies with no heir to take their place. Wait a minute. You said that my father is now running the company. Well, not yet. He will begin once the divorce is final. That way, your mother will not get any alimony. He is currently unemployed. But my father went out of town on business yesterday. Well, not exactly. He resigned from the company he was working for. Yesterday, he moved into the house that your grandfather left for him. Oh sheep. My mom doesn't know, does she? Ms. Hammond looked at her watch. She should be finding out in about 2 minutes. What do you mean? I asked. That's when the process server is supposed to deliver the divorce papers to her. Sheep. She doesn't know. I need to call her. I was just pulling out my phone when her cell phone dinged. Too late. She has just been served. She replied as she looked at the message on her phone. Okay. Now what about those conditions that he mentioned? Well, the most important one is that your mother and grandmother are not to receive a dime or any other benefit from your inheritance. The trust is very specific that only you are to get any benefit from it. The trust for your education is yours regardless, but that is only available to you for your education. The second trust can't be used to benefit them. But I don't want them to be homeless or to starve. That's already taken care of. As part of the divorce, your mother will receive a small trust fund that will continue to pay the rent and utilities for the mobile home that she and your grandmother live in, as well as a small monthly stipend for food and other necessities. There is one more thing, she stated. When and if you get married, there will obviously need to be a prenuptial agreement. That is pretty normal for people with the kind of money that we are talking about here. There will be one irregular clause in that agreement. It will state that if you get divorced because you cheated on your spouse, the entire trust and everything else that is included in this inheritance will be transferred to your spouse. You will not be left with so much as a penny from this estate. She continued to discuss other matters as well as a few other things that I was to receive. After that, there was a mountain of paperwork for me to sign. Finally, there was just one more document for me to sign. "Now, how did you get here?" she asked. "I took the bus. I don't have a car." "You do now," she informed me. She slid over the last document. I looked at it in shock. It was the title for a 1970 Corvette. "Do you know how to drive a stick shift?" she asked. "Yeah. My dad taught me to drive his truck. That has a stick shift." "Good. Just sign this, and I will take care of the transfer of title. It's sitting in the parking lot. You can drive it home. We can work on the title transfers for the other vehicles later. Your father is currently checking them to verify their condition for you." "Okay," I responded. I turned to leave, then stopped and turned back to my new lawyer. "You know, I think that I need to talk to my dad before I go back and see Mom and Grandma." "Where is my dad?" "He's at his new home. It's the house that he will be inheriting. By the way, he won't get ownership of the house until probate is complete. That will probably take about a year. He can live in it, but he won't actually own it. The divorce should be final by that time, so it won't be part of the settlement." She gave me the address of the house, and I drove over there. It took me a bit to get used to driving this beast. I had only ever driven smaller cars like Corollas and Acuras. I did drive my dad's pickup a few times, but that was an older Chevy with a 5.3L engine. The Vet was a beast. It had the 455 HP engine, 4-speed manual Muncie M22 rock crusher transmission, cozy traction differential, as well as several upgrades. I did love the deep rumble of the beast as it flew down the roads. The lady on my phone finally told me to turn left into a gated driveway. As I pulled up to the gate automatically opened. I figured that there was a transmitter in the car that would automatically open the gate when it pulled up. I slid past the gate, then up the long driveway. The driveway split with one way going to a circular drive by the front door, and the other way to a large garage. I saw a garage door open and my dad leaning over the front of a car with the hood up. I decided to park in front of the garage. My dad pulled his head out from under the hood and smiled at me as I parked the beast. "I see that you've been to the lawyer's office," he greeted. "Yes. I actually just came from there," I replied. "I think that we need to talk. I have a lot of questions." "I imagine that you do. I also have several things to tell you. I couldn't tell you about most of this before, but now that several things have happened, I am free to tell you the truth. First off, why was I never told about my real grandfather? That was because when your grandfather refused to go along with your grandmother's crazy ideas, she and your mother got pissed off at him and decided to punish him by refusing to allow him any relationship with you. You weren't told about him for two reasons. First off, they were so mad at him that they decided to just pretend that he never existed. The second reason was that if you knew that he existed, you might have tried to contact him. If that happened, you might have found out the truth." "What is the truth?" I asked. "The truth was that your grandmother had been cheating on him for a while already. When she discovered that he was becoming suspicious, she blindsided him and demanded that she be allowed to continue having sex with her boyfriends. Your mother sided with your grandmother and blamed your grandfather for leaving. He didn't bother to divorce her, he just emptied all the bank and investment accounts and left. She finally had to file under abandonment after a year. Of course, she was broke by that time, lost the house, and had to move into that single white mobile home. By the time she filed, she couldn't find any assets, so she never got anything out of the divorce." "So, why did Grandpa leave you with his house and control of his company?" Dad laughed. "That's easy. Since your mother was so adamant about insisting that your grandpa accept the cheating, I decided to do a bit of investigating myself. We didn't have a lot of money back then, so he footed the bill for the investigators. Your mom was cheating on me back then as well. Yes, I had a DNA test quietly done, and you are my daughter. If you hadn't been, I would have divorced your mother back then. We didn't have much, so it wouldn't have really cost me anything. I discussed it with your grandpa, and I decided to stay so I could raise you right. We made the plan that I would stay married until you were 18 years old. I would then leave, file for divorce, and take over the company until you were ready to take it over. That is, if you wanted to. But you always had low-paying jobs. How did you get the education and experience to run a huge company?" I asked. That was another thing we discussed. Those low-paying jobs were actually for your grandfather's company. He actually paid me to get my MBA as I was working for him. We agreed to a compensation package where my salary was only about $50,000 a year, but the rest of my compensation would be stock placed in a trust that I would receive when you go to college. Of course, none of that will be considered as community property." "Wow. So, you lived with her for all that time knowing she was cheating on you?" "Yes, I did. I did, however, move into the spare bedroom. You may have noticed that we never slept in the same room. You were celibate for 18 years, just so you could be there for me all the time. I asked, astonished. He smirked. Not exactly, he replied. I was just a lot more discreet than your mom was. I have proof of her infidelities, but she has no proof of my indiscretions. We talked for a while more, then he gave me the tour of the mansion. Eventually, I decided that I needed to head for home. Dad did tell me that I could move in if I wanted to. He even had a large room with an ensuite bathroom ready for me. I had an idea that I would be moving sooner rather than later. The vet growled as I pulled up to the trailer. When I walked into the trailer, Mom was throwing a temper tantrum that even the worst spoiled 5-year-old would be proud of. She was yelling, screaming, kicking furniture, and throwing whatever she could get her hands on. The only thing she wasn't doing was laying on the floor and kicking her legs in the air. I guess that was only because she was too busy marching around the living room and kicking the furniture. Every few minutes, she would stop and read something from the papers that she was holding, then began screaming and cussing about what she had just read. Even if I hadn't already been told that she had recently been served divorce papers, it wouldn't take a brain surgeon to figure out what was going on. What the duck? Unemployed, so no alimony. That ducking bastard. That got a good 5 minutes of screaming from her. He actually filed under ducking adultery. It took another half hour for her to wind down. Now Bonnie, Grandma began. Bonnie is my mother's name. This is just the opening salvo. I'll call my divorce lawyer and set up a meeting with her. After we get her on board, she will submit our counteroffer. When he sees that, I'm sure that he will come to his senses and try to reconcile. If not, we will take him to the cleaners and make sure that he ends up living in a cardboard box under the interstate. Actually, Mom, I think I would rather use the lawyer that your second husband used. She pretty much ate your lawyer for lunch in court. Grandma looked down and blushed at the memory of that humiliation. Yes, well, unfortunately, she has rather old-fashioned ideas and refuses to represent anyone who has ever cheated. Besides, you apparently didn't notice who his lawyer is. She is already representing him. While Mom and Grandma were discussing the divorce petition and legal representation, I went into the kitchen and made a sandwich for lunch. I came back into the living room with my sandwich and a glass of lemonade and sat on the sofa to eat. That's when Mom and Grandma finally noticed me. Alyssa, where have you been this morning? Mom asked. I had a meeting about financial aid for college. I replied. Okay, it wasn't entirely a lie. After all, it did entail the trust fund to pay for college. Oh, that's great. So, how did it go? Will you be able to get enough for at least a 2-year nursing certificate? Okay, this was about to get a bit awkward. Actually, I'm now trying to decide between Stanford or Harvard for my pre-med. After that, I will see which medical school I want to attend. Mom and Grandma looked at each other and smiled like people do when a child tells them about a fantasy that they think will come true, then looked back at me as if I was a bit mentally challenged. Dear Grandma began. I appreciate your enthusiasm and your hopefulness, but what scholarship do you think could possibly pay for all that? The best you would get in your circumstances was a scholarship that would pay for tuition at a state university. You would still need to pay for room and board as well as books and everything else to live. Besides, that would only cover your undergraduate degree. Medical school would not be covered. Yes, Alyssa. Perhaps you should temper your expectations a bit. You would be better off if you went to the local college and got a degree in something a bit more practical. You could then continue to live here a lot cheaper than in a dorm. You could even get a part-time job to help cover the expense of books and everything else that the scholarship won't cover. Mom added. Oh no, I responded. The meeting I had assured me that the assistance that I am getting would cover everything for whatever I wanted to do. It will cover tuition, books, and even purchase a small house near the university for me to live in. It will also give me a $5,000 a month stipend for food, entertainment, and any other necessities that I will need. Also, after I get my undergraduate degree, it will then cover any advanced degree that I want. When I finally graduate, I will be free and clear with no student debt at all. What about transportation? No scholarship that I have ever heard about covers that. Already taken care of. I got a car this morning, I answered. Mom and Grandma were flabbergasted. What? How did you get all this? What kind of scholarship is it? Well, it isn't exactly a scholarship, I answered. It's more of a trust fund that was set up for me. A trust fund? Grandma asked, looking a bit pale. Yes, I answered. My meeting this morning was with a lawyer. Do you know a woman named Carrie Hammond? I asked. When there was no reply, I continued. Well, she's a lawyer. Apparently, I was named in a will from someone that I had never met. He was a billionaire. He set up several trust funds for me. One was for my education, and the other was for after I graduated. Apparently, it comes to several $100 million. What? Mom screamed. Who would do that? We don't know anyone with that kind of money. It's from Grandpa, I told them. That's ridiculous, Grandma stated. None of my ex-husbands have close to that much money. Besides, they are all still alive, so you couldn't have inherited anything from them yet. Also, Carrie Hammond was the lawyer that my second husband used in our divorce. Don't you mean your third husband? I asked. Don't be ridiculous. You know that I was only married 3 times, Grandma huffed. Really? So, you weren't actually married to my biological grandfather. Strange that you divorced him just before I was born if you weren't actually married to him. But as white as their faces went when I said that I thought that I might need to call 911. So, you are telling me that you don't know anyone named David Knight? I asked. I watched a video this morning where he explained everything to me. I also was given all the documentation that supported what he said. He even had DNA tests done that proved that he is my biological grandfather. After that, I went over to see Dad. He gave me more information. You two cheated me out of having a relationship with my grandpa. Instead of letting me know about him and spend time with him, you forced me to live here in Squalor and go to the worst schools in the state. I read a letter from him that said he tried to get you to let him help get me into better schools, but you refused to. I also saw the letter that you wrote to him saying that the only way that you would let him into my life was if he stopped the divorce and accepted being a cuckold. Instead of actually caring about my future, you two slots used me as a bargaining tool to try and control him. You know what's funny? As a condition of me inheriting hundreds of millions of dollars and taking control of a billion-dollar company, should I want to, I could not use any of the money to make your lives better. After knowing what you did to my grandpa, as well as how you tried to use me to get him to agree to your sheep, I have no interest in rewarding you for your crap. Luckily for you two, you are also named in his will. Grandpa set up 2 trust funds for you. One will continue to pay the rent on this trailer, so you have a place to live. The other one will give you a small monthly stipend to ensure that you have enough food, so you don't starve. Anything else, you will need to pay for yourselves. Grandma looked shocked. Mom was just pissed. I'm pretty sure that they had no idea that Grandpa had been so successful after he divorced Grandma. Hundreds of millions of dollars? Grandma asked, finally comprehending what I said. Yes. After the divorce, he developed a couple of patents. Over the years, he improved on them and developed other patents to go along with them. He didn't sell the patents, instead he leased them to different companies. The money is still coming into the trust funds. Anyway, here is the card from the lawyer. You should probably make an appointment to see her regarding the trust to pay the rent on this trailer and your monthly stipend, I said as I handed over her card. Oh, one more thing. I'm moving out. I'm going to stay with Dad until I leave for college. He's staying at Grandpa's house. It's a lot nicer than here. It's over 10,000 square feet, has lots of spare bedrooms, so my friends can stay over, theater room, indoor and outdoor pools, stables with horses. My bedroom has an ensuite full bathroom, and the staff to take care of everything. Besides all that, there is a garage that I can keep my car in, and not worry about it being stolen or broken into like I would if I left it parked overnight here. Car? What car? Mine is broken down again. Can I use yours to run to my hair appointment? Mom asked. I just laughed. Seriously? When did you learn how to drive a manual transmission? No, you can't use my car. You would probably crash it before getting it out of the driveway. But how am I going to get to my hair appointment? Mom whined. I don't know, I replied. Uber, Lyft, cab, hitchhike, walk. Anyway, not my problem. With that, I turned and walked to my room. There wasn't a lot that I needed to take. It was mainly just clothes, shoes, a small amount of makeup, and a few personal belongings. Sadly, it all fit into 3 plastic bags. 2 bags into the trunk of the vet, and 1 in the passenger seat. 10 years later. Good evening. I greeted the woman in exam room 3. What seems to be the problem tonight? I graduated medical school with honors. Yes, residency was hell, but I made it through the 100-hour weeks. I wasn't even remotely interested in engineering or business, so I just let Dad take all that over. I still got a good distribution from the profits. I also had to attend quarterly board meetings. Currently, I am working in the ER of a local hospital. I was wealthy enough that I really didn't need to work, but this was my calling. I enjoyed what I did. I was emulating my hero Elizabeth Charles. Yes, I know that she is just a fictitious character in a story, but I still admired her. I looked up from my notes and got a shock. Grandma, I said. Alyssa, she replied. About that time, another woman burst into the room. Parking here is a ducking nightmare. I had to park almost 2 blocks away. Alyssa. Mom. I hadn't seen or heard from them in 6 years. They had shown up to my graduation just before I started med school. Okay. This is a surprise, but we need to take care of Grandma's problem. Would it be more comfortable for you if I got another doctor for you? I asked. No, this is fine. Besides, maybe we can catch up a bit while you are treating her, Mom said. Okay. I do need to inform the attending that I am treating a family member, though. I will be back momentarily. I escaped from the room. I disclosed the issue to the nurse at the desk, and she made a note in the file. She also followed me back to the examination room to get the authorization from my grandma. Grandma had tripped and hurt her wrist when she landed. It wasn't broken, but it did have a mild sprain. As I fixed her up with a soft splint, Mom and Grandma peppered me with questions. They were still living in the trailer. That wasn't a surprise, since I knew that Dad had authorized the trust to purchase it outright. Mom had finally gotten a job at a 7-Eleven, so they had some disposable cash for some entertainment. She was still pissed at the divorce, though. She was mad that Dad had actually moved out and divorced her, then she was really pissed that there were no assets that she could get. Since the records showed that he was unemployed and had no income, she didn't even get alimony. She tried to go after his inheritance, but the trusts were exempt from community property. Besides, they were still tied up in escrow, so they really didn't belong to him yet. The divorce was final for about 6 months before they officially put him into the CEO position. She tried to get the mansion he lived in, and even argued that he was getting money from somewhere in order to live there. The beautiful lawyer shot that down by showing that he was simply maintaining the property until the will was fully executed. His only pay was free room and board. What I never told them was that Dad was actually running the company. He had deferred his pay until a year after the divorce was final. Once the year was up, he officially stepped in as CEO with a ridiculous salary and benefits. I really tried to deflect their questions, but they were relentless. I was now living in Grandpa's old house. Dad had purchased another mansion a couple of blocks away when he moved his 2 girlfriends in. I doubt that he will ever marry either one of them. Not because he or they were not in love or were against the thought, but it was more that he couldn't choose between them, and they couldn't choose which one of them he should marry. Yes, I am now engaged. My fiancé is a lawyer. Yes, I enjoy working in the air, and no, I have no interest in starting my own practice. We want to meet your fiancé. Why can't you invite us over for dinner sometime and introduce us? Mom asked. I mean, you are my daughter, you live in the same city, but we haven't seen you since your graduation with your bachelor's degree before med school. Mom was always good at using the emotional card on me. Fine. I sighed, knowing that I wasn't getting out of this one. Friday night at 7 o'clock. Here's the address. Bring bathing suits, so we can get in the pool and hot tub after dinner. 7 o'clock Friday night. Hi Mom. Hi Grandma. I said as I opened the door. They were swiveling their heads, looking at the opulence of my home. I had watched them through the window as they walked slowly from their old beaten-up car that was parked in the circular driveway. The slow walk was mainly because they took their time looking at the landscaping, fountains, and sculptures that adorned the front lawn and gardens. You have a beautiful home, dear. Mom managed to stutter out. Thank you. Most of this was done by the decorator I hired, but Jerry, my fiancé, has a few plans to add to it. Oh, will Jerry be here tonight as well? Mom asked, apparently assuming that the stunning blonde standing a few paces behind me as I greeted my family was a servant. Okay, that could have been because just behind her there were a couple of others standing in uniform as well. I turned behind me. The gorgeous blonde smiled as she saw my smirk. Mandy, please take their coats and handbags. George, would you please move their car over by the garage? My redheaded maid leapt forward and took their coats and handbags from them to put in the coat closet. George, he was listed as my driver, but I almost never allowed him to actually drive, stepped up and requested Mom's keys. Obtaining the requested keys, he stepped to the door. I saw the frown on his face when he spied the decrepit Toyota sitting there. Sorry, George, I thought. So, when are we going to meet your future husband? Grandma asked. Yes. And we need to discuss your wedding and what your plans are for giving me some grandchildren, Mom added. Husband? I asked. I heard a snort and giggle from the statuesque blonde bombshell standing behind me. Well, yes, Mom said, confused. You did tell us that you are engaged. We also assumed from our conversation at the hospital that we would be meeting him here tonight. Him? Well, of course. I mean, you are getting married, so op I aus. The last word began to be drawn out as Mom and Grandma suddenly noticed that the blonde bombshell behind me could no longer maintain her facade and was now doubled up in hilarious laughter. That just broke it for me as well, and I doubled over laughing. Mom, Grandma, meet my fiancé Jerry. Jerry, this is my mom, Bonnie, and my grandmother, Daphne. Mom and Grandma looked at me in shock. You gay? They asked in two-part harmony. Oh yes, I responded. We are very happy, merry, and joyful. They looked confused for a bit. You're a lesbian? Grandma exclaimed in shock. Yep, have been all my life. Didn't you notice how I never ever went out on a date with a guy? At least they acted gracious. I don't know if it was real acceptance or if they were just trying to ingratiate themselves with me. It really didn't matter much. We had a pleasant meal of chicken scallopini. How's your father doing? Mom finally asked. She hadn't seen or heard from him since the last court date. Oh, he's doing great, I replied. He and his girlfriends left on Friday for a month-long vacation to Jamaica. Girlfriends? Mom asked. Yeah, I responded. He is dating two identical twins and their best friend. I'm not sure how much relaxing he will be getting though. He's having a hard time deciding which one of the twins to marry, and they are also having a hard time deciding between them on who he should marry and who should be the other lover. I'm pretty sure that it will end up being a sister-wives kind of arrangement. Jenny and Janie have already told me that they have gone off the pill and are working on having babies already. I can't wait to have brothers and sisters. So, Jerry, Grandma began in an attempt to engage my fiancé. You're a lawyer. Yes, I am. I passed the bar exam a couple of years ago and joined my aunt's firm. That's impressive. What area of law do you specialize in? I practice exclusively in family law, specifically divorce, just like my aunt does, she replied. Mom perked up at that. Really? That's great. I've been thinking about getting a lawyer and have them revisit my divorce. It just seems weird that as soon as the divorce went through that your father suddenly became so successful while I didn't get sheep from it. Unfortunately, you are out of luck on that, Geraldine mentioned. I can't represent you, because I work for my aunt's firm. It would be a conflict of interest. My aunt was your ex-husband's lawyer in the divorce, and her firm is now his company's legal firm. Besides that, I have gone over every word of the divorce records. You can sue him, but you would lose. All you would do is end up paying your lawyer and get nothing back. Well, how did he suddenly go from a mid-level manager at a different company to unemployed for almost a year, then suddenly to CEO? That was the plan all along. The company that Dad was working for was actually owned by Grandpa's company. He also wasn't a mid-level manager. He was the managing director of the business. He had been working directly underneath Grandpa for several years, as Grandpa groomed him to take over the entire corporation. All that time that he was unemployed, he spent getting up to speed on all the rest of the businesses. He couldn't actually take over until the divorce was final, otherwise he would have been on the hook for significant alimony to you for several years. That's how he and Grandpa planned it. What? They did that deliberately just to screw me out of my fair share of the assets. Of course, they did. Dad found out about you screwing around on him years earlier. He only stayed with you because he didn't want to lose me. He stayed in touch with Grandpa, and they made the plan. As soon as I turned 18, Dad quit his job, left you, and had the divorce paperwork filed. I answered. That bastard. I'll take him to court and sue him for fraud. If he thinks it would have been expensive back then, it's gonna be a whole lot more expensive now. Mom ranted. Yeah, good luck with that. It's already been over 10 years. The statute of limitations has already run out. Besides, how would you possibly prove any of that? Besides, you two have got enough to live on. The trust Grandpa left for you two is enough to pay your bills and keep food in your home. But that's it. There's nothing else. We have to shop at Goodwill for our clothes. We can't go to even decent restaurants or have an evening out. We can barely afford basic TV. So, get a job. Do something to earn some money. Nothing's stopping you from doing that. It's just so unfair. I gave your grandfather 20 years of my life. I deserve more than this. Your mother gave birth to you and raised you for 18 years. She gave your father 20 years of her life. She deserves better. Yes, you two were married to them for 20 years each. Yes, Mom did give birth to me. As far as giving them all that time goes, you two spent more time slotting around with other men than you were giving your husbands. And raising me. That was mainly Dad, because you, Mom, were either out with your lovers or recovering the night before. The truth hurt, but it needed to be said. I saw the understanding in their eyes as they finally began to understand their behavior. Too bad it was decades too late. Now, I continued. Because you are my mother and grandmother, and you did occasionally help raise me, I'm not going to cut you out of my life. You will be getting invitations to my wedding. I will include you two in the planning, but Jenny and Jamie will be my main helpers. I will even set aside enough money for you two to get nice new dresses, shoes, and accessories for all the main events, such as the rehearsal and the wedding itself. You will not be sitting in the front with Dad, but I also won't put you all the way in the back. That's because I want to respect Dad. He isn't going to want to sit next to you. You also won't be at the head table during the reception. Shortly after that, they left for home. I decided that I would keep in touch and try to have some sort of relationship with them. They were, after all, family. I would even talk to a few friends and see if I could get Mom a job as a receptionist. It wouldn't be much, just over minimum wage, but she really wasn't qualified for anything else. They would never be wealthy, but at least they wouldn't be destitute either. And that's a wrap for this episode of Sorry What. Trust is a fragile thing, and these stories remind us of the importance of nurturing it. Hit that notification bell, so you never miss a shocking revelation.